And so they know what they're doing. They're making this game, getting you hooked, and then making another game and getting you
Yep,
more
the
hooked.
wonderful world of mobile.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome. My name is Alex Gonzalez, and with me today is my good old friend, J.E.
Hey, that's me.
And please remember that we are not game devs. How are you doing today, Jay?
Just constantly looking for that PS5 sales drop. You know what I'm saying? Just always on Twitter right now.
I hear that, as am I, trying to find consoles for my buddies. But those are not the next generations of games that we were talking about. Today, we are creating something new. Every week, we are not game devs will create a new, exciting video game idea that we have always wanted to play, but do not have any knowledge or know how to create the wonderful experience that is video games. And today is my turn to present my game. And what I want to do is I want to make a game where you're using martial arts to fight. But what I want it to be is I want it to be a game, and for lack of a better way of explaining it, I want the main character to fight like Jackie Chan. I think that would be really, really fun if there were different button combos with different furniture pieces and different where they really engage and use the whole room to fight other characters. I want it to be maybe a game where you're starting out and something happens where maybe it's a case of mistaken identity as you're leaving from like your karate studio where you practice, and someone like gets your identity confused with someone else, and then you have to kind of fight your way home. And while you're doing that, you have to go through several buildings. Maybe you go through different restaurants. So you're using tables, you're using chair legs, you're flipping over different things. Maybe you're going into a counter. Maybe you're blocking with a plate and then throwing other plates at people. I want it all to be interactive the way Jackie Chan does it, basically. I think it would be a lot of fun. A game that comes close would be something like Sleeping Dogs, but I want to go even further than that.
Okay. Um, for me, two games actually pop into my head. Uh, First one, Mirror's Edge, and
Oh yeah, for the running. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and the second game is a game I believe called Blood Roots, which I haven't played. But I've seen gameplay of where it's a guy camping and you literally pick up whatever you can to fight off whatever you have to fight off. Um, but that being said, how I imagine this game, first off, is it to be first person. First person, kind of like a parkour game, and kind of like not a free runner, more of like a linear following a track, but with multiple paths that you can take. And
Yeah, I like that.
how I imagine it to work is let's take the kitchen scenario. Let's say you ran through an alley, you jumped a fence, and the guys have to go around the fence because they can't do what you did. And when they get around, they actually going in from the back side of the kitchen. So you have to fight in this kitchen. Everyone runs out when you walk in, and then the people you're running away from are in your way now because they got in front of you. And the prompts that you see going on the UI are probably like you have to like look in certain areas in first person, and kind of you could see we're highlighting with either like a little circle or something with things you could interact with, and areas you could go, maybe an arrow to point that you could you could grab onto the oven and slide in between, or like there's arrows here that shows that you could like spin around this pole, and there's like little circles to indicate you could pick this up, you could pick this up, and then that will trigger like a animation if there's an enemy within a certain radius, just so it gives you that Jackie Chan-esque where if someone punches, he'll grab the nearest thing to him and then he would do something comical with it. I think it'll be that kind of situation where you pick a path, and if an enemy is in front of you, and you choose to interact with like I don't know I guess like the cutting board, you'll like pick up the cutting board and whack them against the head with it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I want it to be so one button is probably going to be used on your controller to parkour, and another button would be used to interact with objects. I'd want there to be a couple simple combos that you can make, but variations happen depending on what kind of weapon you have. I see there being a trigger, probably left trigger, to be used for blocking. That way, you're also going to be using different objects to block too. That's always been a thing, as well as another trigger to be used for throwing. That way, you can distract multiple enemies at once. Um, I want this game to be a little bit comical too, which I think just kind of happens based on what you're going to be doing. You know, if like you throw multiple plates at somebody and like someone comes at you with a knife and you're blocking with a pillow, it's going to be a little funny to see that all go down.
Yeah, and I think we'll have it kind of like the game is going to be not scripted, but there's going to be multiple paths that will play out in a certain way. It's not like you're not going to feel like you're not making your own choices, and I feel like the player should be able to feel like they're forging their own path, but like enemies will be in certain areas if you go that way through a different path. Like it's kind of yeah, it's going to be kind of scripted in that sense, but it's going to feel open. Like we could kind of predict the main paths you're going to take, but you could go through them differently, you know. Uh
Exactly.
just so we could set up more scripted comical moments where like you have at this point in the game in this one alley you have to block a knife with the pillow type of thing.
Yep. And on top of that, what we're going to say the story setup is a case of mistaken identity where there's a gang that has put out a hit on you. So as you're trying to make it downtown, like as you're trying to get from your apartment from wherever you train at downtown, as you keep going and progressing through the city, you keep running into people. Like let's say you stumble into a restaurant and there's like three gangsters from that gang eating sushi, and they get up and try to fight you. Or like then you bust in and there's like a store, and like there's a dude and there's like two guys sitting maybe outside the store talking over a vending machine, and they're like gonna come in and try to mess with you and different stuff like that.
Yeah, most definitely.
um I want there to be little special nods as well, like depending on the paths you take, where maybe there will be legitimate weapons, like maybe nunchucks here, maybe a pole there. And then another thing I would like is uh like you can interact with maybe sake or beer or liquor, whatever path you're finding wherever you're at, and then it unlocks a little bit of a drunken fighter mode where then it becomes like it's a little bit blurry, you're kind of swaying a little bit in first person, but it's a different kind of fighting style.
Okay. Like maybe we could put like a variation on every single weapon
And
or something.
exactly. And that would be just kind of like a little nod and a wink towards Jackie Chan there,
Right.
because he also did the drunken fighting.
Yeah. I also just to talk mechanics. I feel like most weapons will have like a either one to maybe max 5 use durability. Like
Oh,
like
definitely.
most weapons you'll pick up won't last for that long. Let's say like the nunchucks would last for like 5 swings or blocks or whatever.
Hmm.
But yeah, just to keep the game fluid and fast and just interacting with as much of the environment that you can.
And you're gonna have to block. I think we'll do something similar to a lot of to what a lot of games do, where maybe there will be a symbol above your head or some kind of screen effect letting you know when someone's about to attack, so you can block fluidly and not interrupt the chain. But through that blocking, you're going to end up destroying a lot of handheld objects. So don't really consider it that you're going to be able to get an item and then go all the way to the end of the game with that same item. That's going to be impossible.
Yeah. In terms of traversal, is it going to be like QTEs or is it going to be like
let's do where let's have it where there's QTEs to transition from like open corridor to open corridor, but then once you're let loose in that level, you get to do what you want. So you get to pick your paths and everything, but as you're transitioning from one spot to the other to maybe hide those loading screens, there's going to be QTEs
Okay. And
for
then
you to do.
maybe either total fail states where if you fail a QTE, you will get caught, or if you fail in certain areas, you'll just go to a different level of whatever you're climbing. Like
There you
you
go.
didn't
Yeah.
make it. But in certain instances, like let's say you're at a dead end and the only way to do it is past a QTE to go up and through a window. But if you fail that, you fall down and then you get caught. Or if you're climbing like a fire escape, you fail one QTE and you go on the floor below instead of floor above.
Exactly. Something happens where you fail to dodge like a guard's kick, you get kicked in the chest onto the floor, you flip back up onto your feet, and then you keep going on the lower floor.
Yeah. Cool. Um,
So with this game, we've kind of got what it is where it's going to be a case of mistaken identity until you get to the very end and you get to your house and you find out that the gangster's boss is already there and he's sitting there and he has like your cat and he has like a knife, like he has like the cat in a box and he's gonna like throw it into a lake or a river and you've got to fight all of his like guards and then fight him to get the cat. It's been a lot of dogs being killed for plot progression, so I'm thinking about going with the cat this time.
all right. Um, Maybe we could have a cool sequence, and this is a very deep cut pole reference to it. But there's a scene in a Korean film called Old Boy. I don't know if you've ever heard of this
I've
film.
heard of Old Boy because so you're Korean
Hmm.
and there's another person I follow that's Korean, Bobby Lee.
Right.
And he talks about Korean culture here and there and Old Boy is one of those films that he touts that it's like a must watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little dated now, but at the time, it was definitely a must watch and a point of pride for Koreans because Old Boy got some Hollywood recognition in terms of the quality of the film. And Koreans, of course, Korean filmmakers specifically, they are very like good at the plot twist. That's like a Korean mark is a plot twist at the
Yeah.
end. And Old Boy has a really good plot twist that's interesting and unique to Old Boy and has been copied since. But anyway, the reference I'm talking to is Old Boy has a very, very famous long scene where he does a fight scene in like a hotel or something. I don't want to give away too much for the plot. Like I could say what it is, but that would give away what the plot is. But it's like it's a building that has a underground corridors and hallways. But there's a really there's an elevator at one side of the corridor, and it's just a really long hall, right? And the director directed the scene thinking that they were going to cut in between and show like the action as it goes and cut from the long scene to the short scenes, but the long scene was so good and so like well rehearsed that they just kept it as one long scene without any cuts. And it was literally the main character fighting off like at least 40 other dudes, and it was just one long scene that panned from his start at the elevator walking towards to the other side of the corridor just fighting off these dudes. And there's like moments of like him like kind of they like scare each other, he backs off and he like goes in a couple steps and they back off and they have like a moment
Mhm.
of wait and then they like go at it and then he starts beating them up. But it'll be cool for the last sequence when the boss is there and he's like threatening your cat or whatever, is if we do an homage to that scene where it's just one long corridor, you at your front of your house, and this like the first time maybe you see your character and it's like all like a side scrolling, more of a third person side scrolling beat 'em up just for the last sequence.
That'd be really cool. And as you were talking about that, I was thinking about maybe in between we have little mini bosses as well. Like maybe people who pull up after maybe you spent the last 15 minutes just beating the crap out of all of these gangsters in the downtown district. They call one of their bosses, and he or she comes down and then tries to fight you,
Yeah, maybe
and
like
insert that in.
leaders of different rackets or something that you're going through to get
Exactly.
from point A to point B. And there could be like a cool subway fight. There, like
hmm
maybe all the boss fights are in more of this side profile perspective.
And I want there to be certain rooms where maybe, like I said, you enter a restaurant and maybe there's 3 gangsters. But if you take the wrong like entrances, like maybe you're going through and in the restaurant there's 3 gangsters and you're fighting, and then you go through this back door. Then all of a sudden you're in a mahjong room and they're all gangsters. So they all get up.
Oh,
Like there's
like
certain rooms that are going to be unlucky,
yeah,
where there's going to be it's going to be hidden, like their fronts,
like more
you
dangerous
know?
rooms than others.
Exactly.
But we should put like a reward at the end. Maybe at the end of these rooms, that's where you get the special weapons, like the nunchucks or like
Mhm.
whatever the short katana is called. I forget what those are called. Katos, katos,
That I don't
You know
know.
what I'm
I
talking
know
about,
I know
though.
scimitars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the short katanas and stuff like that. And that's where you could get those weapons if you do successfully beat one of these danger rooms or whatever. Uh, cool. What about setting? It sounds like you're very like this is very Asian inspired. I'm Jackie Chan, of
I
course, and all that.
Yeah, I think it's because of what I have in my mind and all of the films I've watched. It doesn't necessarily have to be Asian inspired, but it all like it's starting to feel like one of those just movies back in the day of like that era where I think it almost has to be, where it's like those smoky rooms, those restaurants. It's like its own culture. So you're wondering where the police are, but it's not really like kind of like a police part of the community where the community kind of handles its own. They don't really call the cops in that area.
Yeah.
Not because it's high crime, but they deal with their own problems. They don't want any outsiders getting involved.
Well, I mean, let's make it like super Jackie Chan esque, where it's let's make it a period piece and let this take place in like 1995 or some shit like that.
Yeah.
And it's just about like Asian American kid in living in New York and give it like a Jackie Chan Adventures vibe, you know? Um
Yeah, perfect.
and it doesn't necessarily have to be like maybe it's like an Asian American kid or like maybe just a straight up just Asian dude who's like more of an immigrant, but they just either attend or maybe they teach at this dojo, and on their way back home they get mistaken for someone by the mob or something like that.
All right. I like all of that. So when we're looking at graphics, I'm thinking this game's probably going to look pretty lifelike, right?
Interesting.
Like
That's
not
not
ultra
what I had in my
realistic,
head.
but I was just thinking for the first person point of view, I'd want it to look pretty good. It's not, I mean, we're not going to have, it's not going to be a cartoon, you know?
Right.
It could. You could do cell shaded, but I would want to have like that 3D polygonal look. Just in my mind, I pictured just kind of like, I don't want it to be crisp either because it's going to be a game mostly set at nighttime. So it's going to have like a lot of lighting, a lot of smoke. The streets are going to be wet because it's New York. So there's going to be light shining off that.
That's interesting
What were you
because I
thinking
was
here?
I was thinking exactly the opposite of what you were thinking, where I thought this was going to look more cartoony and more like
But still 3D, right?
yeah, definitely still 3D, but like when you described the mob boss or whatever, the main bad in your house with the kitten, I just imagined him like very big and like his
Yeah.
shoulders super like Kingpin from Spider-Man PS4, where he's just oddly giant for some reason, or I guess more like a Kingpin from Spider-Man Into the
Well,
Spider-Verse, where he's just this bulking guy and the kitten's like this tiny dude, and I just see this like huge dude with a tiny kitten, and that's what I imagined in my head.
I yeah, I don't mind that. I guess what I don't mean realistic per se. What I'm meaning is that it's highly detailed. I want to be able to see their faces. Like when you're fighting, I want there to be faces of exertion, stuff like that. I want you to be able to hear your character fight too, because the sound effects that I almost said actor that the main character makes are just as important as they're fighting. Um, he's no Bruce Lee or anything like that, but I think there's going to be some sound effects as there's exertion. But no, I see what you're talking about here. We can make it like a 3D game where there's a little bit more stylization, and that would be fun to play up with the colors. One thing I've always liked about Asian culture, Chinese culture, if we're talking specifically, which is kind of, it seems like where we're going, is the use of bright colors, especially red.
Right. I also see the main character doing a lot of little quips and stuff like that. Like I imagine his personality in similar veins to like Nathan Drake from the Uncharted games, where he's like snarky and kind of sarcastic, but also kind of full of himself. And like every time you get into these fights, he kind of has something snarky to say about it, and then maybe be like, "You don't understand. I'm not the guy you're looking for." And then you guys get in a fight, and he's like, fuck it. And then he starts wailing away at these guys,
Perfect. What kind of music are we looking at here?
I say like 90s hip hop beat with like Chinese instruments.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. I'm not going to fight you on that at all. Yeah, that sounds great. It would even be great if it's like when you're outside fighting, you're getting more of the hip hop beat. It's still going to be there, but I guess a little muted while you're in restaurants and stuff where there's more of a Chinese influence. And then the Chinese influence will be muted more when you're on the streets where the hip hop takes over.
For sure.
All right. So, how much are we willing to pay for this game?
It's about $30 myself.
Yeah, nice little $30 adventure. This would be the kind of thing I would download before traveling on a Switch.
I just feel like because of like we said, it's not like super linear, but just because of the linearity of it, there's not much replay value, first of all, and there's also just you can only play the same game how many times,
Correct. Unless, you're showing other people or want them to play.
Exactly. Or you just really dig how the game feels.
All right. Get your timer out, Jay, because we're going to name this game.
And go.
Mistaken Identity.
I like it. We'll keep that one on the table. But what if we give it a goofy name? Like, I know we can't take this one because it's been taken, but like a goofy name like Kung Fu Hustle. Like,
I don't want to. I don't want to be racist,
right?
But like Kung Fu Confusion. No,
that could go out like as KKK, or I guess Kung Fu wouldn't work, but
what could we say? The Wrong Guy. We could sit there and say, like, he could do these clips like, "Hey, you've got the wrong guy." And they're like, "No, we don't." Well, you're messing with the wrong guy.
I had a bad pun that came to mind that probably wouldn't be a good title for this, but what if we named it The Wong Guy? And his name's Wong.
It gets worse and worse. I don't know if we should go forward.
The Wong Guy, a case of a mistaken identity.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Sure. Let's do it.
No, we can't name it that.
Is this the game that's going to sync the podcast? Who knows? Okay. All right. The wrong guy. Mistaken identity.
I like the wrong guy. Let's go with the wrong guy.
All right.
2 minutes and 12 seconds.
Perfect. The wrong guy. A game where you are in first person and must use any piece of the environment to fight as you get home because you have been mistakenly identified as someone who owes a massive amount of debt to a gang in town. All right. I think we have a game here, Jay. Would this be a game you'd want to play, and is it fun?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a fun time. I can't say that I enjoy this type of genre of games too much, but if it's like a short, let's give it a 4 to 6 hour campaign just to play through it real quick, I think I would have a good fun time with it.
This game would be tons of fun for me. I'd love it. I'd love it if I were to see it come to VR later. I think that would be really cool too, since it's first person, but we'll see. And with that, we've gone gold. We hope you look forward to this experience that will probably never release. You can write to @poundgames@gmail.com if you have anything to patch into our idea. We have a potential Patreon if you would like to back our ideas. Thank you for joining us today. We will be back next Wednesday with another new IP. Again, my name is Alex Gonzalez.
And I'm J.E.
Thank you, and please remember that we are not game devs.
Did you read the whole script? I feel like you missed a lot there.
No, I read it. It's just different. Way different than it used to be. Potential Patreon, it's up. That's what I was like, what?
I don't know if you got the right script, but people have heard it 100 times before. It's okay.
Did I do the wrong one?
Maybe.
Is it because it's
Did you like have a concept script up?
That's what I wonder, because that one sounds so weird. Did I pull it out of my ass?
I don't know.
Yeah, I wondered why it was oh, I did. I'm using a script from February 27, 2018.
Nice.
Ha 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 ha.
I wonder what you missed and what we got in there.
Well, I finally asked you how you feel about the game.
Right.
I summed up the game.
Yeah.
Oh, the game studio that I would like to make this game would be let's give it to Sucker Punch.
I was gonna give it to Super Hot Team.
That's a great one. And I found the script that we are using today, currently.
Do you see what you missed?
If you liked our show, why not subscribe and give us all the stars on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Store, Spotify, YouTube, and more. If they ask for a review instead of reviewing our show, become your inner game critic and review The Wrong Guy, the video game we just created. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back next Friday with another new IP. You know it's Jay, and you know it's me. Thank you, and please remember that we are not game devs. Woo!
The wrong script.
Whoops. The wrong script because of the wrong guy.